I was 73 years old, standing in my own kitchen, when I realized I had become a ghost in my daughter's life. Not a spooky one, just a transparent one. I was there, but she looked right through me. She was on her phone, scrolling through photos of her vacation. A vacation I hadn't known about until I saw the Instagram post 3 days after she got back. I asked her, "How was the beach?" And she said, "Fine. Just fine. No details. No invitation to the memory." I stood there holding a cup of tea I'd made for her, the way I'd made 1,000 cups of tea for her when she was a child with a fever, a teenager with a broken heart, a young mother too, exhausted to boil water. And now she wouldn't look up from a screen to see me holding it. That was the moment the chase began. Or rather, that was the moment I admitted to myself that I'd been chasing her for years. We don't call it chasing, do we? We call it staying involved. We call it being a present parent. We call it showing up. But when you're the one always initiating the phone call, always the one driving the 2 hours to their house because they're too busy to come to yours, always the one who remembers to send the birthday card while yours arrives 3 weeks late with a hastily scrawled, "Sorry, life got crazy." That's not involvement. That's a pursuit. And the brutal truth that took me from 73 to 92 to finally understand is this: you cannot love someone into loving you back. Not your children. Not anyone. I chased my daughter for 19 years. 19 years of leaving voicemails that went unreturned. 19 years of watching her check her watch when I visited. 19 years of biting my tongue when she'd say, "Mom, you don't need to come to every school play," as if my presence was an inconvenience, not a gift. And the whole time, I thought I was being a good mother. I thought persistence was love. I thought if I just tried harder, she would see that I wasn't trying to control her. I wasn't trying to guilt her. I just wanted to be part of her life. I wanted to matter. Here's the part that makes people uncomfortable. The part one didn't admit to myself until I was well into my 80s. When you chase someone, you're not loving them. You're feeding something else. You're feeding the fear that if you stop, you'll disappear from their lives entirely. You're feeding the ego that says your role as parent is the most important role you'll ever have, and without it, you're nothing. You're feeding the addiction to being needed. And the person on the receiving end of that chase, they feel it. They might not name it, but they feel the weight. They feel the expectation hidden inside every offer to help, every unsolicited visit, every just checking in text. And the more they feel it, the more they pull away. My son-in-law was the one who accidentally told me the truth. About 8 years ago, I'd driven down to their place unannounced. I know, but I told myself I was just dropping off some jam I'd made. I saw him through the kitchen window, sitting at the table with my daughter, and they were laughing. Really laughing. The kind of laughter that crinkles your whole face. And I paused with my hand on the gate because I realized I hadn't heard her laugh like that in my presence for years. When I was there, her laughter was polite, measured. It was the laugh of someone who's bracing themselves for the next thing you're going to say. I didn't go in. I left the jam on the porch step and drove home, and I cried the whole way. Not because she was laughing with him instead of me, but because I realized I'd become someone she couldn't laugh freely around. I'd become a responsibility, a duty, a checkbox on her to-do list. That was the beginning of the stop, not a dramatic announcement. I didn't sit her down and say, "I'm no longer chasing you." That would have been another form of chasing, making it about me, making her manage my feelings again. I just stopped. I stopped calling first. I stopped sending the weekly thinking of you texts. I stopped showing up with casseroles when she hadn't asked for them. I stopped volunteering to babysit the kids when I knew she had other options. I stopped rearranging my calendar to fit her availability. I just stopped. And here's what happened. Nothing. For 6 months, nothing happened. The silence was so loud I could hear my own heartbeat in it. I'd sit in my armchair in the evenings, the phone sitting on the table beside me like a sleeping animal, and I'd watch it not ring. I'd watch it not light up with her name. And I'd think, was I that invisible? Did I mean that little? Had the 19 years of chasing been holding the entire relationship together, and without it, there was nothing? That's the terror that keeps parents chasing. That's the fear that has us sending the 5th text, the 7th invitation, the apology for something we didn't even do wrong. Because we'd rather chase than face the possibility that we don't matter to them as much as they matter to us. But here's the thing. 6 months turned into 9, and somewhere around month 8, I stopped checking the phone. I stopped because I got busy. I joined a local walking group. I'd started painting again, something I hadn't done since my husband passed. I'd made a friend, another widow named Helen who laughed so hard she snorted, and we'd sit on my porch and talk about everything except our children. I'd stopped defining myself by how often my daughter called. And then, one Tuesday afternoon in October, the phone rang. And it was her. She didn't apologize for the silence. I didn't ask for one. She just said, "Hey, Mom, I was thinking about you. How are you?" And for the first time in years, I didn't say, "I'm fine." I said, "I'm actually really good. I just finished a painting of the oak tree in the backyard. It's terrible, but I had fun." And she laughed. Not the polite laugh, the real one. And she said, "I'd love to see it." That call lasted 45 minutes, longer than any conversation we'd had in a decade. Not because I was chasing her, asking 100 questions to fill the silence, but because for the first time, I had something to share that wasn't about her. I had a life, a real one, not one I was pretending to have so she wouldn't worry about me. And she was curious about it. That was 8 years ago. I'm 92 now. And here's what I've learned, after all those years of chasing and all these years of not. When you chase your adult children, you teach them that you don't have a life of your own. And whether they admit it or not, that makes them respect you less. Not because they're cruel, but because it's exhausting to be someone's entire emotional world. Adult children want to know that you're okay, that you have friends, hobbies, interests, a reason to get up in the morning that isn't waiting for them to call. Because if you don't, then every interaction becomes them managing your loneliness. And nobody wants to feel like they're responsible for their parents' happiness. It's too heavy a load. They'll distance themselves just to breathe. The other thing I learned, and this one took me a long time to stomach, is that some distance is healthy. When your children become adults, your relationship has to change. It has to become a relationship between equals. And you cannot be equals if you're always the one pursuing. If you're always the one who needs more. If you're always the one who can't let go. They have their own lives, their own families, their own problems. And here's the brutal part. You are not the center of their world anymore. And if you try to be, you'll push them further away. I see this happen with my friends. Some of them are my age, some are younger. They complain that their children never call, never visit, never include them. And then they tell me they called their daughter 3 times yesterday, left 2 voicemails, sent a text, and then drove by her house just to see if she was home. And they don't see the connection. They don't see that the chasing is exactly what's causing the running. Because here's the psychology of it, as I've come to understand it. When someone is constantly reaching out, the person on the other end starts to feel pressured. They start to feel like every interaction is a demand. Not a demand you're making consciously, but a demand they feel nonetheless. Call me back. Visit me. Include me. And humans, we have a weird response to pressure. Even when it comes from someone we love, our instinct is to create distance. We start screening calls. We start making excuses. We start feeling resentful, even though we know the person just loves us and wants to be close. The resentment comes from the loss of autonomy. The feeling that we don't get to choose when we connect. It's being chosen for us. When I stopped chasing my daughter, I gave her back her autonomy. I stopped making the choice for her. And when the choice became hers again, when I wasn't calling, wasn't texting, wasn't showing up, she had to decide for herself whether she wanted a relationship with me. And she did. She just needed the space to choose it. Not out of obligation, not out of guilt, but because she actually wanted to. Now, I'm not saying it was easy. Those first months of silence were some of the loneliest of my life. I had to sit with the possibility that she might never call. That maybe the relationship I thought we had was just me dragging her along. And without me dragging, it would die. And I had to make peace with that. I had to decide that my life was worth living even if my daughter wasn't in it every day. That was the work. That was the brutal, ugly, crying into my pillow work that nobody tells you about when you're holding your newborn baby, thinking you'll be close forever. But I did that work. And on the other side of it, I found something I didn't expect. I found myself, not as someone's mother, not as someone's grandmother, not as a widow defined by her loss, but as a 92-year-old woman who paints terrible paintings, walks 3 miles a day, argues with Helen about whether the tomatoes need more water, and has a daughter who calls her twice a week because she wants to, not because she has to. Last Christmas, she came to my house. She brought the grandkids. She brought a lasagna. And at some point, she sat down next to me on the couch and she said, "Mom, can I ask you something?" I said, "Sure." She said, "A few years ago, you just stopped. You stopped calling all the time. You stopped showing up unannounced. I thought you were angry at me. I thought I'd done something wrong. I told her I wasn't angry. I told her I just realized I needed to let her live her life. She was quiet for a minute. Then she said, "It was weird at first, but then I started missing you. And I realized I'd been taking you for granted. I'd been assuming you'd always be there, always calling, always reaching out. When you stopped, I had to actually think about what you meant to me." She cried a little. I cried a little. The grandkids were in the other room, making too much noise, and Helen's cat was trying to steal the lasagna. It was messy and imperfect and absolutely real. And I thought, this is what I was chasing all those years. This moment of genuine connection. But I couldn't get here by chasing. I got here by letting go. So if you're a parent of adult children and you feel like you're the one holding the entire relationship together, I'm going to tell you something that might sound cruel. Stop. Just stop. Not to test them. Not to teach them a lesson. Not to punish them. Stop because your chasing is not working. Stop because you deserve a life that doesn't revolve around waiting for someone to love you back the way you want to be loved. Stop because the chase is making you small, and you are not small. You are a whole person with decades of life behind you, and whatever time you have left ahead of you. And that time is too precious to spend it chasing people who need to learn how to walk toward you on their own. I'm not saying it will fix your relationship. It might not. Some children won't come back. Some will stay distant, and you'll have to find a way to be okay with that. And that's the hardest truth of all, that you can love someone with everything you have, and they still might not choose to be close to you. Not because you did anything wrong, but because that's just how they need to live their life. And you have to let them. You have to let them go, not because you stopped loving them, but because you finally love yourself enough to stop begging for scraps of attention. When I stopped chasing, I didn't just give my daughter space. I gave myself space. Space to figure out who I was without the constant pursuit. Space to fill my days with things that made me happy, whether she was part of them or not. Space to realize that my value as a human being was not determined by how often my children called. And that realization, that was the real gift. That was the freedom I'd been chasing all along without knowing it. Now, at 92, I have a good life. Not a perfect one. My knees hurt when it rains. I forget names. I talk to my plants, and sometimes they talk back. But I have a life that's mine. My daughter visits once a month. We talk on the phone regularly. She asks my advice sometimes, and I give it carefully, only when she asks. I'm a grandmother who shows up when I'm invited and doesn't show up when I'm not. And I'm at peace with that. The other day, Helen asked me if I had any regrets about the years I spent chasing. I thought about it, and I said no, because those years taught me what I needed to learn. They taught me that love doesn't look like chasing. It looks like letting go. It looks like trusting that the people you love will find their way back to you if they're meant to. And if they don't, it looks like trusting that you'll be okay anyway. So if you're out there, holding the phone, waiting for it to ring, wondering if you should call again, don't. Put the phone down. Go paint something. Go for a walk. Call a friend who calls you back. Live your life. And let them live theirs. The ones who matter will find you. And the ones who don't, well, you'll have something better than their attention. You'll have yourself. And that's more than enough.